Good morning. Today, I'm going to talk about the typology of Western Romance differential object marking, and I'll be focusing on the historical-comparative and micro-variation. Before I begin, I would just like to understand the organizers of the Cambridge RLS Romance Linguistics Seminar for organizing this week, for organizing this year's conference, despite everything. And I especially would like to thank the audiences from previous conference venues. Go Romance 2013 OSU show, to the workshops on DOM, which took place in Paris, in Nalco, and Zurich, to whom the previous versions of this work were presented. And I also like to pay homage to Dr. Jim Adams, who oversaw a lot of my work on Latin philology, and who sadly passed away last year. This year marks another year of health and safety crisis. So before I begin, I just wish all of you a very happy and healthy new year. Right, so Romance differential object marking, there should be a term that shouldn't be surprising to all of us, given that it's a major phenomenon in Romance linguistics. Yeah, so as a people that roles in Rogers, differential object marking is a major phenomenon that's attested in pretty much all varieties of Romance. We have famous quotation by Nocentini, because if I just read this out in Italian, even though Italian isn't my main Romance language, if I just read this out, si tratta di un'innovazione che nel dominio romanzo si presenta sfasata nel tempo, si continua nello spazio, si trova in molte aree della fase incipiente. Right, so the emphasis are in Zamboni and also in Sonicola. So even with my very limited Italian, I can tell that Romance DOM differential object marking is extremely widely attested and pretty much everywhere in the Romance speaking area. But it also has a lot of micro variation, because this quote seems to imply that DOM is very uneven throughout the Romance speaking area, and so the variation of DOM is very much a main theme here. Two main morphemes that have been associated with Romance differential object marking is add and pair, which are roughly divided into Western and Eastern Romance. In this presentation, I'll focus on Romance add. And I say this particularly with a personal focus, because I don't speak Romanian, so even though I've read a lot about Romanian pair, I cannot analyze on what happens in Romanian, so I'll have to focus on Western Romance add. But on one level, my ignorance of Romanian pair is irrelevant to my analysis of the Western Romance add, given that add and pair are etymologically different. They come from add and pair respectively, and so they're positive in terms of different properties. So I think add and pair are probably best seen as independent developments with no correlation between them. So we're looking at two different types of differential object marking, Western and Eastern Romance respectively. People have looked at the micro variation of add. So for example, Magdalene, who was also Spanish, Romanian, and Sardinian. However, I believe that more needs to be done, because a holistic account of Western Romance DOM is still missing. And we can look at all the major varieties where DOM is tested, having yet been compared thoroughly. There's such a wide distribution of DOM, also beyond that, it should go back to Proto-Romance and possibly Latin add. Rosanna and Sonicola, and more recently Fagal and Magdalene, shown that there are some Latin attestations of add that could be seen as anticipating Romance DOM. So this brings us to the title of my presentation, namely the Historical-Comparative and Microvariation of Western Romance DOM, focusing on add. Right, let's first begin with the theory and data of differential object marking, because differential object marking isn't just very prevalent in Romance languages, it's also very common in the world's languages. So a recent volume of Sozong and the Wittlack and Microvariation shown that DOM has a huge typological distribution. If there's any way that we can summarize DOM, despite its multifaceted and very complex range of properties, it's markedness. And DOM, I think, can be encapsulated in terms of markedness, and markedness can be used to divide into nominal and verbal markedness. The idea is that marked categories tend to be more syntactically marked. On the nominal scale, two main factors are anonymity and referentiality. For example, typologists have shown that human objects are more marked than non-human animate objects like animals, etc. And these are more marked than inanimate objects. Referentiality, definite objects are more marked than indefinite specific, which is also more marked than indefinite non-specific. We can also think, I think, in terms of grammatical categories. For example, grammatical number, the singular is more marked than dual, plural, and more marked than plural. I think singular can be classified as individual, whereas plural can be seen as mass or group. Person, likewise, first person, second person, and third person, etc. Pronouns, and just nominal categories. Pronouns have been shown to be more marked than proper nouns, and proper names, and proper names have been shown to be more marked than common nouns. If putting all of these categories together, people like Lazare, have formed this type of scale where the first person pronoun, second person, third person, proper names, and human common names, animate common names, the inanimate uncommon names. Notice here that Lazare hasn't incorporated referentiality and specificity into the picture. So we can imagine just how complex this hierarchy becomes. Here is the starting point. The verbal markers, people have shown there's transitivity, which can be formal semantically analyzed as effectiveness or kinesis. Also gives rise to differential object marking. Formally, if we are looking at Vendel's a classic classification of event variables, achievements and accomplishment are different from activities and state, and they involve become. So if we think in terms of semantic primitives, like people like Doughty, and also Davidson have formal transitivity. Doing the classic account by Hopp and Thompson has shown that agentivity and effectiveness can also give rise to DOM in Romance. So looking at some illustrative examples, you get some a very famous examples of DOM that illustrate the sort of phenomenon that we are looking at. The two main nominal factors are animacy and referentiality of the object nouns. So, for example, in Spanish, we could say that busco a una persona que sabe usar la computadora, etc. Contrast to busco a una persona que sepa usar la computadora. The idea is, una persona, that's the object, yeah, and it's animate. However, the difference between the first one and the second one is in the first one, que sabe usar la computadora. So here, it's indicative, and so here it designates a specific, albeit indefinite object. Una persona que sabe, so busco a una persona que sabe, etc. In the second, however, where a is optional, the busco una persona que sepa usar. The use of the subjunctive here means that the object is indefinite, but also non-specific. So in English, I translate this as I'm looking for anyone. Busco una persona que sepa usar la computadora, etc. So here, a is optional when the object is non-specific, even if it's animate and indefinite, as in the previous example. Specificity of the verb, also effectiveness. So yeah, so here's a famous scheme provided by Portier. Matar is more effective, is more transitive than ver, is more transitive than considerar, is more transitive than tener. The idea is that matar obligatorily select a when the object is human or animate. Tener, however, never selects a if it denotes a possession. Judging on these premises, we have the following minimal test proposed by Adele Beck. Tiene 12 hijos. She has 12 children. So this denotes some possession. And a here, we never use a when denoting a possession. A su madre, cerca, consigo, a su lado, etc. Tengo al presidente con hombre honorado, o esos estados tienen al español como idioma oficial, etc. These denote kinesis. In the first one, so tiene a su madre cerca, etc. This denotes some kind of an invitation. So she actively brings her mother next to her, etc. And the second one can really be translated as consider. Okay, so tengo al presidente un hombre honrado. I consider, my president a good man, etc. The second one, similarly, estos estados tienen al español. So these states designate Spanish as an official language. So these all differ from the canonical possessive meaning of tener in denoting kinetic events. So here are also used when denoting a kinetic event. Topicality. A famous example in standard Italian proposed by Ricci and Belletti is Aggiani, questi argomenti non convincono. Versus questi argomenti non convincono Aggiani. Okay, so in the first one, where the object is topicalized, it's preposed to the left periphery, so is used. In this canonical post-verbal position, however, is not used. Okay, so Belletti, following seminal work by Monica Berretti, has shown that topicalization in standard Italian also gives rise to the use of as a marker of the direct object. Right, so if you look at the differential object marking formally, if we think in terms of like verbs in deriving the verbal spine and the clausal structure, following my work by Rappaport, Lin, and Gillian Ramjan, etc. So here is still the clausal and the verbal structure. We've seen that in Italian, topical marking is a possibility. So as recently shown by Bletti, you can add marking on topic, and topicalized marking merge in the spec in the specifier of topic theme. You can also involve add marking of the object. The second one is a kinesis, so agentivity or effectiveness. I've written books about this. People like Borrego, Molinero, and more recently Lopez. They've written books about the spec of V, what they call a spec of V. But if I adopt a light verb analysis, it'll be spec of effect. The spec of effect would also involve the use of add as a marker of the effective object. Yeah. Effectiveness and agentivity are formal, semantically closely correlated, and these can be argued to give rise to add marking of the object, the effective object in the spec of effect. If you look at the nominal domain, however, where nominal marking can also give rise to a DOM. So here, I DOM a classic account of the DP hypothesis proposed by Valois and more recently by Longobardi. So here is the nominal spine where the case. The idea is that add is a case marker, so it's merged as head of k. Below k, there is a series of cartographic projections of the noun. So there is D. D denotes standard notions of the definiteness and specificity. The following lines, temporary, etc. D also denotes proper names. So Longobardi is a classic account of proper names showing that proper nouns they surface in D as they denote highly referential, almost a unique reference. They're also pronouns. The following Postal's classic analysis, we can analyze pronouns as their D element, and we can also distinguish person and number distinctions, as we saw on a previous slide. And finally, a semantic feature. We've seen that anonymity is another factor which conditions DOM. And here, we have the anonymity features in the lexical root. One has said that the en root features are lexical semantic. So anonymity, for example, is a lexical semantic feature, whereas D features are formal, grammatical. As we shall see in later on, these different types of features can have different effects on the distribution of DOM. All right, so if you look at the typology of Romance differential object marking, let's begin with Spanish, because Spanish is a classic example of DOM. Not only in Romance, but also typologically, as Mozart shown in his classic work. Nominal unmarkedness, as we saw, is determined by anonymity and referentiality of the object noun. So we're looking at this example again, which is similar to the one that we saw on the previous slide. In Spanish, necesita a una enfermera que pasa la mañana con ella, versus necesita a una enfermera que pase la mañana con ella. Right, so the use of correlating with the mood of the verb in the relative clause tries to these differential effects of specificity. The idea is that is optional whenever it denotes an indefinite and non-specific object. However, no one ever says that is ungrammatical. I think people like Clifford and Leonetti have shown that is optional. It's not ungrammatical with non-specific objects, so can still be used. So I think in Spanish, animus is pretty much a sufficient condition, for DOM. Non-specificity gives rise to optionality, not to ungrammaticality. And so the idea is that as long as the object is human, animate, you can use even though is optional if it's not specific. But also other type of metaphorical usages of human and animate objects have also been shown to be crucial for DOM. Marking can also be used for place names to denote communities or works or compositions. So, for example, a famous example from given by Torrego, estudia al pueblo de Numancia. Okay, so someone studies the community al pueblo de Numancia. Given that communities that consist of people, there could be an animacy feature here. And also some very some rather peculiar examples. Tocar mucho a Beethoven or leer a Virgilio. Okay, tocar a Beethoven means to play with the music of Beethoven. It doesn't mean to touch Beethoven. It means to play the music, the musical works of Beethoven. Similarly, leer a Virgilio, to read the works of Virgil. So here, it seems to be an analogical extension of human reference. We are not talking about human objects, but rather, the things that are associated with human objects. Verbal markedness. One thing about kinesis, shown in recent work by Marco and Garcia, Garcia, who builds on some even older works given by Maureen, Weiss and Reader, etc. It's possible to find kinesis, on inanimate objects in technical scientific prose. So, for example, la primavera precede al verano, or las dificultades priman al proyecto. The point here is that these examples are taken from technical scientific prose. So this isn't poetry. We are not personifying the object here. So animacy, it's out of the question here. So some technical prose where la primavera precede al verano, or priman al proyecto, etc. We also have in grammatical manuals. So for example, el adjetivo modifica al sustantivo, or los adjetivos adaptan a los metales, etc. Kinesis, however, we've shown that in Spanish, kinesis independently triggers DOM because we have it with inanimate objects. So animacy of the object is irrelevant here. We're talking about this verbal properties that seem to independently trigger DOM. So DOM, as we can see in Spanish, is heavy because nominal and verbal factors of markedness seem to independently trigger DOM. That's the main thing. In Catalan, analyzing the DOM in Catalan is a bit tricky because one always wonders, given that modern Catalan, modern Catalonians are perfect bilinguals. They grow up speaking both Catalan and Spanish equally. When they use DOM or when they don't use DOM, is a genuine Catalan feature or is borrowing from Spanish. But, despite everything, I think nowadays people have shown that DOM does exist in colloquial Catalan. So Victoria, Escandel, and Vidal, and more recently Ruth and Penny. So they've shown that DOM is a genuine feature in Catalan, especially in spoken Catalan, in writing, in formal education, in everyday speech. People do use it. And more recently, Anna and Bineta has shown that DOM is gradually being recognized in Catalonian official sources. So let's have a look at this. Yeah, so again, we are looking at the same nominal factors, animacy and the referentiality. Personal pronouns. Personal pronouns have been shown to be obligatory. in spoken Catalan. So for example, yo te ayudo a tú, tú me ayudarás a mí, tú a mí. With all other categories, however, a is optional. So for example, with the names, Teore, La Maria, or a La Maria, it's optional. And also with other types of pronouns, for example, with interrogative pronouns, indefinite pronouns, personal pronouns, etc. It's also optional. So, aquí ha visto a Miguel, aquí premia qualsevol, without afectará a molts, etc. So in Catalan, with the exception of a personal pronouns, DOM seems to be optional across the board. There's a lot of hesitancy in Catalan speakers, and with the exception of a personal pronouns, they always differ between I'm using DOM and not using DOM, because there's some bilingual thing where they sort of they think that DOM may be a Spanish feature, and so they hyper correct by omitting DOM or whatever. So there's always this bilingual hesitancy in modern Catalan speakers. Global effectiveness. I've been quite tempted to find these examples. In Anna's most recent work, she has shown, by quoting sources from everyday life, it is possible to use as a marker of inanimate objects, where the factor which determines the use of seems to be kinesis, as we saw on the previous slide. So, for example, compenso que afectará el mundo internet a la economía mundial. Okay, afectará a la economía mundial. Similarly, in a grammatical prose, grammatical manuals, we also have examples like these. Els determinants acompañan a los noms. Modifica a un adjetivo, o de aquest l'adjectiu que defineix a la biolingüística. So these are examples that have been cited from Anna, and she's cited these from modern university students who have used here, where animity is irrelevant. It seems to be its effectiveness. So in effectiveness, the verb, like Spanish, can also independently trigger DOM, where animacy of the noun is irrelevant. So unsurprisingly, so the DOM in Catalan is similar to Spanish. Look at Italian dialects over, right? Okay. As we all know, Italian dialects there are many of them, and the amount of micro variation between Italian dialects is infinite. So it's impossible to look at all of them. Now we're supposed to focus on central and southern Italian dialects, including Sardinian, where DOM is quite prominent. That's not to say, however, DOM doesn't exist in northern Italian dialects. In the interest of time, I'd like to focus on your central and southern Italian dialects, which we can compare with the Iberian, the Spanish and Catalan patterns that we saw on the previous two slides. Right, so animacy and referentiality again are the two main things. We've shown that with personal nouns and proper nouns and proper names, DOM is obligatory. For example, it's Celine, iti, attia, aidu, aidi, a Giovanni. Neapolitan, siente a me, ad visto. Don Gennarino, Parese, Gigi Andriani, who is a native speaker of Parese. He's also shown that Amen, Amme, Ayed, Ibi, Amarie, etc. Sardinian Jones, who has done some seminal works with Apu Visto Solo a Is, Joan, etc. Because the personal pronoun and names are crucial for DOM. DOM applies to toponyms and communities, not to literary and musical work. So, for example, Apu Visto a Napoli, soccorrere alla città loro. And these examples are from Sardinia and Neapolitan, etc. However, in Sardinian, we cannot say apleggi a Platone, wrong. Apleggi to Platone. Right, so now compared to smoothly. And also with common nouns, it seems to be a combination of factors that trigger DOM. With common nouns, is optional or even ungrammatical if the animate noun is indefinite or non-specific or non-individual. So with indefinite, a Sardinian, like Yemelo, has shown that is ungrammatical. So Amazzaru, un cristiano. Okay, we cannot say Amazzaru, un cristiano, according to Yemelo. although other speakers seem to have given me slightly different readings. Yale has shown that is ungrammatical when the object, even if it's human and animate, is indefinite. There's similarly, guarda, a me no ha un carcerate. Here is optional, according to Gigi Andriani, because the object there is indefinite. Specific and likewise, and Gigi Andriani has some example. Cercava nu cristiani che s'abbellesca u arese. Okay, this is a contrast to Spanish. Clearly, in Spanish, even if the object noun is non-specific, it's optional, not ungrammatical. Whereas in Italian, arese, Andriani has shown that is actually ungrammatical. So it's animate noun can only be marked by if it's specific. And also, with singular nouns, the examples given by Yembla, Ferentino, etc., have shown that is optional or even ungrammatical when the animate object is plural. So arubaru, I iso cushin. In Spanish, this would be obligatory. Whereas in Sicilian, given that the object is plural, it denotes a group of people rather than an individual. Here is optional. In the Neapolitan, similarly, Sardinian, similarly, so where is actually optional or even ungrammatical when the object is plural, it denotes a group of people. Right. So if we put all of these examples together and compare them with Spanish, and the idea is that with personal pronouns and personal and proper names, is obligatory. But that aside, we don't get with literary works, nor do we get when the animate common noun is non-referential. Finally, with double effectiveness, my informants of Italian dialects have shown that examples like this given by Gigi, suppose trying to get out and fiere. This is a direct translation of the Spanish technical scientific prose that we saw on the previous slides. Here cannot be used. And this has been supported by all my informants of Italian dialects who tell me that can only be used with animate objects, when it's inanimate like this, and also if it's non-personified, which is some cases, this is supposed to be a scientific prose. Here cannot be used. So, in contrast to Spanish and Catalan, effectiveness alone cannot independently trigger DOM in Italian dialects. Finally, with the Portuguese, people have shown that in both the European and Brazilian Portuguese, there is one particular type of object that seems to require add, and that's the divinity, the marcação de divindade. It's the main criterion for DOM in Portuguese. So, for example, the animacy is here being reinterpreted in terms of divinity. So, for example, names of God. A famous example from Typology, temer a Deus. Okay, you worship God, you revere God. A very nice minimal pair, I think, can be seen from this one. So, amar ao filho, but amar o filho. Amar o filho means to love the son. Okay, it denotes romantic love for a real person. Amar o filho. If we use a, however, this becomes a religious thing. Amar ao filho, and of course, ao filho means you're the son of God, Jesus Christ. Amar ao filho is a religious cult. You worship, you love your Lord God Almighty, etc. It's amar ao filho. There are examples of common nouns that denote social superiority, and that seems to be similar to divinity. So, for example, Clifford, I've shown you these examples. Ao chefe, or ao presidente, ao supervisor, ao professor, etc. If you're for plan, you may remember Ronaldo. You could say respeita ao Ronaldo. Or if you're in Brazil, respeita ao Garrincha, who is another very famous Brazilian footballer. So it's possible to use when you're referring to common animate noun to social, who are socially more superior to you. So, for example, your dad, your boss, your president, your supervisor, etc. Pronouns, they were shown that only first and second person singular requires a, so oddio attio oggi a me. In the third person, however, it becomes optional. Oddio a ele, oddio ele, oddio ela, elich, elas, etc. Also, with the first person, first and second person plural, it becomes ungrammatical. So we cannot say oddio anos, avos, absolutely wrong. So if we put all of these together in Portuguese, we get DOM on certain types of human and animate objects, namely divine or superior, within a religious and secular context, respectively. And we also have it with certain types of personal pronouns, like first and second singular. Otherwise, we don't have DOM. So if we put all of these data together, so we get the following typology. With Spanish, we see the animacy is really the main criterion. We also have the analogical expansion of animacy in denoting communities and toponyms, place names, also works, literary and musical works. The a is only optional when it's a non-specific. It's optional, not ungrammatical. And of course, we get a with agentive and affective verbs, which can mark inanimate objects. Catalan, we get a obligatorily with personal pronouns. With other types of noun, it's optional. And with verbs, similarly, we get a with agentive and affective type of verbs. That's down to verbal kinesis. With Italian dialects, it's personal pronouns and proper names where a is obligatory. With animate common nouns, a is only obligatory if these are strongly referential. Otherwise, these are optional if the animate common nouns are indefinite, non-specific, plural, etc. And we do not have kinesis functioning as an independent trigger for DOM here. Finally, with Portuguese, divine and superior types of nouns and personal pronouns are first person and second person and singular, and we also do not have kinesis here. If we look at it this way, we could say that in the weakest type of DOM, such as Portuguese, these are the most marked categories. The idea is that even in a very weak system of DOM, these categories need to be marked by a. So these are the most marked types of categories for differential object marking. These are to be followed by Italian dialects where the range is bigger. And finally, with Spanish and Catalan, we have the rest of the spectrum. So we put all of these factors together. We formulate and follow a scale or hierarchy of differential object marking. So with Portuguese, personal pronouns, first, second person singular, divine, and superior. These are the most marked type of categories that have to be marked, even in Portuguese. In Italian dialects, however, we have the rest of the personal pronoun paradigm, also with proper names and with the referential personal common nouns. And finally, in Spanish and Catalan, we have the rest. So, non-referential personal common nouns have to be marked by a as well. I've said before that the most the wide distribution of differential object marking is beyond doubt. I think we should go back to the Portuguese Romance and Latin. And of course, in Latin, scholars such as Pinkston and Adams have shown that there are examples where ad, which is a directional related position, can seem to be reanalyzed as a case marker in anticipation of Romance. So the Romance are dative case marker of indirect objects. Pinkston and Adams have shown that ad actually remains spatial in most of the examples of Latin. And Rosanna Antonicola has also shown that ad can be used to mark both indirect and direct objects. And crucially, it's the marking of direct objects which concerns it, because these are most direct and relevant examples for Romance differential object marking. So the idea of preposition is that prepositions in traditional terms denote inherent or semantic case. The idea is that prepositions are oblique markers, and as such, they denote inherent and semantic case, which also means that the object of ad is semantically and thematically conditioned. They are different from grammatical case or structural case, in that they're not purely functional. They are thematically and semantically conditioned. In the case of add, add marks and direction and destination. They are necessarily referential because they're highly directional. They point to a particular direction. And semantically, they also more than often mark human, animate, and affected objects, given that they tend to mark these types of thematic roles, like recipient, beneficiary, experiencer, etc. These are, of course, all human and animate and also affected thematic roles. So we're looking at some examples here. A famous example from the Latin Bible, the Genesis 4:4, where it's Dominus res ad abo et ad munera. So ad abo and munera, these are definite and highly specific. These are respexit. Ad here denotes looking back. It denotes the direction of the vision. So a respexit ad abo ad munera eus, where the object of ad is highly definite and specific. Ad abo ad munera. And similarly, within Christian context, there is the Libri Macabarum, the Moises Oraba ad dominum, or in the secular, so Chronicon Salernitanum, where the Venius ad domino postposceva, where ad here is derived from the classical form ab, given that in the medieval Latin, the word final consonant can be a weakened, and ad has been shown to replace ab, certainly with these types of verbs of begging or seeking, etc. In the first one, it's a verb of praying. It's a Moises or Rabat ad dominum, praying to God. And in the second one, so she was begging her Lord for mercy. So ad dominum postposcebat. But here, when the objects here denote human, animate, also superior and divinity. So yes, I feel obliged to say a few things about the formal parametric setting of differential object marking. I'm in Cambridge, and Cambridge is the hub, the epicenter, not of COVID, but of a formal parametric analysis. Of course, the ReCos project has given rise to a lot of work. Ian Roberts, in his seminal paper, has shown that micro parameters can now be shown to underlie meso and macro parameters. The idea here is that parameters are getting ever smaller. This goes back to your Chomsky and Borer's conjecture. All parameters are lexical, and so the way that Roberts has been analyzing parameters, he's been using micro lexical parameters as the underlying units of meso and macro parameters. So the current trend is that the formal parameters are getting more and more finer grained. We're now looking at specific lexical, more specifically functional categories as the units of parametric variation. If you look at the distribution of the Romance ad again, okay, so we've come to the conclusion that ad is reanalyzed from a direction proposition to a case marker. According to Roberts and Rousseau's formal metric for simplicity, this would fall under the definition of simplicity, because the original agreement between ad as a preposition is lost, and it's realized as a k marker, which is a merge function. So according to formal metrics of simplification, this does fall under their definitions of a formal structural simplification. However, if you look at the schema again, we have seen that ad is reanalyzed from lexical preposition to a case marker, so like this. However, there is lots of variation here as well. So we've seen that a kinesis, which we only have in modern Spanish and Catalan, where the specifier of the verb, so the specifier of an affected verb is marked by ad independently of the nominal properties. And finally, within the nominal domain, proper names and definite referential nouns, these are also marked for but also divinity in Portuguese. Personal pronouns are also marked, but only in the first and second person singular in Portuguese. And finally, in the lexical domain, even if we identify human and animacy as the main factor, there's also a lot of variation. And in Spanish, there is analogical, metaphorical expansion of animacy into communities and literary works, etc. Catalan is optional. In Italian dialects, we only have human objects and communities. And finally, with Portuguese, it's divinity and a social superiority. So, so I guess some distribution of Western Romance and Dharma shows that there is sublexical micro variation. That even though we're talking about the same morpheme that have gone through structural simplification as parametric setting from a P becoming K, the exact distribution of K denotes different subsets of objects in different Romance and varieties. So here, I think Romance DOM shows very clearly that even lexical accounts of parameters aren't enough to capture the exact distribution and subtleties of differential object marking. It seems to demand an even smaller, finer grained level of variation at sublexical. All right, so we have sublexical micro variation in distribution of K as seen in the Western Romance differential object marking. Right, if I just conclude by acknowledging a few things. In Spanish, agradezco a vosotros por asistir a mi presentación. I'm absolutely fine because we've seen that the object is human or animal, but also it's pronominal. So DOM here is obligatory. It's in Spanish. In Portuguese, if I say something like eu agradeço a vocês por assistir a minha apresentação, this is probably a bit ropey because we've seen that vocês, I'm saying in Portuguese, it's only used for marking divine and superior types of objects. So if I just add a little caveat here, vocês são como divindades para mim. Então, eu agradeço a vocês por assistirem a minha apresentação. Finalmente, eu gostaria de homenagear a Jim Adams e a Huntington, que são dois deuses para todos nós linguistas romanistas. Muito obrigado.